And now the news in details. Let's take a look at Africa. Impeachment proceedings against Kenya's deputy president are constitutional, a court said on Wednesday, clearing the way for the Senate to hold hearings and vote on his dismissal this week. Kenya's National Assembly voted on Tuesday last week to impeach the deputy president, Rigathi Gachagua, on 11 charges, which included corruption, undermining the government, and stirring ethnic hatred. Gachagua has denied all charges. Gachagua has said the impeachment motion, backed by opposition lawmakers and allies of President William Ruto, was based on falsehoods that constituted a political lynching. According to court documents seen by newsmen, he launched an appeal in the High Court by Judge Eric Ogola, said the process could go ahead. The deputy president was Ruto's running mate in their 2022 election win, helping secure vital votes from the populous central Kenyan region. But the men have since fallen out and political alliances have shifted. Ruto fired most of his cabinet and appointed members of the opposition to what he called a unity government after nationwide protests against tax increases, in which more than 50 people were killed. The Senate is expected to... Voters in Georgia turned out in record numbers. 52,000 voters had cast ballots at early voting sites of 4 p.m., nearly double the 136,000 who participated in the first day of early voting in the 2020 election, said Gabriel Sterling, Georgia's #2 election official. Early voting, either in person or by mail, has become increasingly popular, with U.S. voters nearly 1 in 7 voters cast their ballots ahead of Election Day in 2020, according to the University of Florida's election lab. However, many Republicans oppose the dramatic expansion of the mail voting that year, saying it was less secure than in-person voting. And Trump cited false claims of mail ballots fraud as he sought unsuccessful to overturn his defeat by Democrats Joe Biden. Some Republicans continue to insist that voters should be able to cast their ballots only in person on Election Day, though party officials are encouraging supporters to vote ahead of time. Nationwide, 5.5 million Americans have already voted this year, according to Election Lab. By contrast, 27 million people had cast their ballots at this point in the 2020 election, as voters sought to avoid crowded polling places during the COVID-19 pandemic. Like some other states, Georgia has tightened its mail voting laws since then, requiring voters who want to cast an absentee ballot to provide proof of identity and limiting the number of places they can deposit the ballots. Georgia on Tuesday blocked a new rule from the state's election board that would have required counties to count ballots cast on Election Day by hand, a provision critics have said would cause delays and disruptions in reporting results in the battleground state. Fulton County Superior Court's Judge Robert McBurney wrote in his decision that the rule would be implemented too close to the election and that it would cause administrative chaos given the limited time available to train poll workers. The public interest is not deserved by pressing pause here. This election season is fraught. Memories of January 6 have not faded away, regardless of one's view of that date's fame or infamy, he wrote. Anything that adds uncertainty and disorder to the electoral process deserves public. A temporary injunction has been issued in Georgia allowing the state's election board to hold the hand counting rule that required election workers to count the number of ballots cast on November 5th before they are delivered to the county for counting and tabulation. The rule, approved by 3 board members praised by former President Donald Trump, was set to take effect on October 22, 2 weeks out from Election Day. However, it was opposed by Democrats in the state, the Republican Secretary of State, and Attorney General. The Democratic National Committee and the Democratic Party of Georgia, with support from Vice President Kamala Harris' campaign, sued in a Fulton County court to halt the new rule from going into effect. Democrats praised the temporary injunction, stating that the decision to block the rule made democracy stronger and ensured that voters could cast a ballot, knowing it would count. The state has been a primary focus of Trump's unfounded claims that the 2020 election was stolen. Elon Musk gave around $75 million to his pro-Donald Trump spending group in the span of 3 months, federal disclosures show, underscoring how the billionaire has become crucial to the Republican candidate's efforts to win the U.S. presidential election, report says. American PAC, which is focused on turning out voters in the closely contested states, battleground states that could decide the election, spent around $72 million of that in the July-September period, according to disclosures filed to the Federal Election Commission. That is more than any other pro-Trump super PAC focused on turning out voters. The Trump campaign is broadly reliant on outside groups for canvassing voters, meaning the super PAC founded by Musk. The world's richest man plays an outsized role in the razor-thin election between Trump and Democrats Kamala Harris. Musk, the CEO of electric car manufacturer Tesla, was the sole donor to the group in that period. On Wednesday, he said in a post on X that he will be giving a series of talks throughout Pennsylvania, less than 2 weeks after his appearance with Trump in the state. Musk said people needed to sign a petition on his America PAC website to attend his talks from tomorrow night through Monday. Pennsylvania is considered a crucial state for both Trump and Harris in the race for the White House. Musk, who has said he has voted for Democratic presidential candidates in the past, has taken a sharp turn to the right this election. He endorsed Trump in July and appeared with him at a rally in Pennsylvania earlier this month. Musk's donations to American PAC propelled him into the exclusive club of Republican mega donors, a list that also includes banking their Timothy Mellon and casino billionaire Miriam Adelson. For a 90-day period of Montreal port workers' strike, Makinon said that there would be no strike or lockout during the deadline negotiation period, according to Opposed Next. Talks between the Maritime Employees Association MEA and Montreal Longshoremen's Union remain in a deadlock over wages. The parties will have to submit responses to the Labour Ministry no later than Friday, October 18th, the MEA said in a statement. The strike has impacted the Viaio and Maisonneuve terminals, which accounts for about 40% of the port's container traffic. The Montreal Longshoremen's Union did not immediately respond to a request by newsmen for comment. Mexican officials urged safety and stability in private investment in the country on Tuesday, following a bilateral summit with business leaders in which fears about constitutional reforms dominated the agenda. Companies such as Amazon, Mexico Pacific, Royal Caribbean, and Woodside Energy are set to make significant investments in the country in the next year, Economy Ministry Marcelo Ebrard said. Close to 250 executives attended the summit, held annually but of particular importance this year in the first weeks of President Claudia Sheinbaum's administration. Last month, Mexico's Congress passed a sweeping judicial overhaul, which will put judges up for election by popular vote, arguing it will reduce corruption. But the reform has drawn concerns from top trading partners, Canada and the U.S., and risks being challenged by both countries under the trilateral USMCA trade agreement, which is up for review in 2026. Total investments announced on Tuesday, many of which had already been previously confirmed by the companies themselves, topped $20 billion. That figure could come up to $30 billion if more planned investments materialized, according to reports. Mexico Pacific, which is building a liquefied natural gas LNG export plant in the western coastal state of Sonora, will invest around $15 billion in the country in 2025. The firm said earlier this month it will develop an excursion site for daytime stops at the port of Mahahol in southern Quintana Roo Estate. Local media had then pegged the investment at closer to $600 million. Ebrard added that Amazon would invest $6 billion over the next few years to boost its network and digital capacity in Mexico. The company had previously said it would invest $5 billion in Mexico over 15 years. At least 21 people Salina Oil Terminal, operated by state company PDVSA, authorities said. The fire broke out early in the day during a storm and has been raging through the evening. The facility, which PDVSA uses mostly for moving crude and fuel between domestic ports, is located near the western city of Cabimas on the shore of Lake Maracaibo. Many people are exposed to high temperatures. We have counted 21 injured so far, all of them with minor lesions. The chief of the Cabimas firefighters, Mufid Humeidan, told newsmen, adding that the number could increase. PDVSA did not reply to a request for comment. Fires, power outages, and other incidents are common at PDVSA's facilities due to the deterioration of oil production sites, refineries, terminals. Earlier on Tuesday, they were working to control and smooth out the balls of fire, which were leaving a tall plume of black smoke. The firefighters were running out of the foam needed to extinguish this type of oil-related fires, Humeidan was quoted as saying by local media. The tank had about 75,000 barrels of oil when the fire broke out at the terminal storage patio, Humeidan said in a video earlier on Tuesday, adding that nearby communities would not need to be evacuated. The tank's structure was seen collapsing in several videos as people were standing close to it. An explosion was heard by neighbors later, a source close to operation said, followed by a taller column of fire. Another source close to operation says, followed by a taller column of fire. There was a boil over, another source said. That was what you see in the videos. Injured people were taken to a PDVSA hospital in the area, according to the sources. Government of the Brazilian state of Pará in the Amazon will consult indigenous communities on how they will benefit from the future sale of carbon offset credits that U.S. companies have agreed to buy to try to protect the rainforest. In a statement received by newsmen on Monday, the Pará government's environmental secretary Sama said it will begin a new phase of dialogue with indigenous peoples and other traditional communities in the rainforest. Scientists say preserving the Amazon rainforest is vital to combating global warming. Amazon.com Inc. and a group of companies agreed last month in New York to buy carbon credits in a deal valued at $180 million through the Leave Coalition Conservative Initiative, which it helped set up in 2021 with other firms and governments, including the United States and United Kingdom. The sale of carbon credits in Pará, Brazil, has been criticized by 38 indigenous and community organizations for not being properly consulted. The transaction with the Leave Coalition is set to be finalized in 2025, following a series of controversies that have shaken confidence in the carbon offset market. The transaction involves a forward purchase and no credits will be transacted until after the consultation process. The Federation of Indigenous Peoples of Pará, FIPIPA, is urging indigenous communities to participate in the consultations, stating that they do not feel fully informed and that consultations must explain how benefits will be shared. Canada's highest court is set to hear arguments on Tuesday on when a young person can be considered an adult for sentencing purposes. The result may reshape how Canada sentences youth and could, a lawyer told newsmen, set an example for other Western countries to follow. At issue are the cases of IM and SB, two young men who cannot be identified under Canadian law because of the crimes they were convicted of took place when they were minors. IM was convicted of first-degree murder following a 2011 stabbing when he was 17. SB was convicted of first-degree murder following a 2010 shooting when he was 16. Both were sentenced as adults to life sentences with no parole eligibility for 10 years. They are appealing their sentencing to Canada's Supreme Court, arguing prosecutors did not meet their obligation in rebuting the presumption of the accused diminished moral blameworthiness. Canadian law allows individuals under 18 to be treated as adult due to immaturity, a presumption that diminishes the moral blameworthiness. Lawyers for IM and SB argue that the presumption needs to be high and require expert evidence. They also argue that a young person must have maturity to be sentenced as an adult. The government argues that the seriousness of an offense is relevant to assessing moral blameworthiness and expert evidence is not required. A Supreme Court's decision could clarify when a child can be sentenced as an adult, a practice that is inconsistent. Canada, in coordination with the United States, on Tuesday designated the pro-Palestinian group Samudwan as a terrorist entity, alleging that it had links with another terrorist-designated group, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. The listing of Samudwan as a terrorist entity under the criminal code sends a strong message that Canada will not tolerate this type of activity and will do everything in its power to counter the ongoing threat to Canada's national security and all people in Canada, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said in a statement. Two U.S. officials who resigned last year in protest over President Joe Biden's policy on the Gaza war have relaunched a lobbying organization and a political action committee to advocate for a revamp of Washington's long-standing stance on the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. Josh Paul, a former State Department official, and Tariq Habash, who used to work as a policy advisor at the U.S. Department of Education, said the American public is no longer in favor of unconditionally sending U.S. weapons to Israel, but that elected officials have lagged behind. Their PAC, called a new policy, would support candidates whose position on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict center on aligning U.S. policies with human rights and equality and would ensure U.S. arms transfers to all countries in the Middle East, including Israel complying with both U.S. and international law. Washington's unwavering support for Israel's military operations in Gaza and more recently in Lebanon has emerged as a key reason for why Muslim and Arab voters who resoundingly had backed Biden in 2020 may withhold their votes from Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris in the upcoming election. Many Muslims and Arabs in the U.S. have urged Biden to call for a permanent ceasefire. Harris faces Republican former President Donald Trump on November 5th in what polls show to be a tight presidential race. The U.S. is Israel's largest weapons supplier and has provided it with billions of dollars in military aid since October 7, when Palestinian Hamas militants attacked southern Israel, killing 1,200 people and kidnapping 250 others, according to Israeli tallies. Israel's relentless retaliatory offensive of the densely populated Gaza Strip, which was home to 2.3 million people, has reduced the enclave to wasteland with hundreds of thousands of people repeatedly displaced. More than 42,000 people have been killed, according to Palestinian health officials. Probability of an attack on Iran's nuclear sites remains low, but any potential damage would be compensated, State Atomic Energy Agency spokesperson Baruch Kamavaldi said on Wednesday. According to semi-official news, after Iran's missile attack on Israel on October 1, there has been speculation that Israel could strike Iran's nuclear facilities, as it has long threatened to do. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said in a statement on Tuesday that Israel will listen to the United States but will decide its actions according to its own national interests. The statement was attached to a Washington Post article which said Netanyahu had told President Joe Biden's administration that Israel would strike Iranian military targets, not nuclear or oil targets. Biden has said he would not support an attack on Iran's nuclear sites, and oil markets have been on edge over the prospects of an Israeli strike against Iranian oil fields. Kamavaldi told Nonis that any attack on Iran's nuclear sites remained improbable and that if this happened, the damage was likely to be minimal and quickly repaired by Iran. The Iranian spokesperson added that the UN nuclear watchdog and the international community should condemn any threat or attack on nuclear sites. You're watching the international news on Atlantic Television Network. Still ahead, Turks vows to defend border amid asylum row in Poland. We'll be back after this break to stay with us.
The people of Maiduguri need your help. A catastrophic flood has engulfed the city, leaving over 1 million residents stranded and fighting for survival. Entire communities are submerged, with people trapped inside homes and on rooftops cut off from food, clean drinking water and essential supplies. Health experts are warning of a potential outbreak of deadly diseases, and medical facilities are out of commission. The situation is dire. Helicopters, boats and high-riding trucks capable of navigating the treacherous, waterlogged areas are urgently required to reach the countless men, women and children still awaiting rescue. The Nigerian media is issuing a desperate plea to the government, humanitarian organizations, international actors and citizens across the nation. Step in now, before it's too late. For more information on how you can help, contact Professor Usman A. Tar, the Honorable Commissioner for Information and Internal Security, Borno State, on 0809-233-3955. Every second counts.
This is powered by Atlantic Television Network.
Of the international news in Atlantic Television Network. We are open for adverts, placements, bookings and commercials. And you can connect with us and watch us on ATN socials, Facebook and YouTube. It's Atlantic Television Network, Instagram and TikTok. It's Atlantic TV Network 1, X formerly Twitter, Atlantic TV Net, which is live on our website, atlanticnetwork.tv. And now to the rest of our stories. Visitor spending in Japan broke an annual record in just 9 months, official data showed on Wednesday, demonstrating the economic power of a tourism boom fueled by the weak yen. Travelers spent 5.86 trillion yen through September, preliminary figures from the Japan National Tourism Organization showed. The eclipsed the 5.3 trillion yen spent in all 2023, a record of any 12-month period. Tourism spending, classified as an export in national accounts, is poised to become Japan's second biggest export sector after autos and ahead of electronic components. The average visitor spent 223,000 yen on their trip. Based on the data from July through September, Italians spent the most, followed by Spaniards and Russians. There were 2.87 million visitors in September, down slightly from 2.93 million in August. JNTO data showed arrivals have set new monthly records since February, including 3.29 million in July. That was an all-time high for any month. Through September, 26.88 million tourists have arrived in Japan, already more than the total of 2023, and on pace to break the record of 31.9 million set in 2019, before the COVID-19 pandemic shut global borders. China's Premier Li Jiang proposed closer three-way ties with Russia and Mongolia at a meeting on Wednesday with counterparts from its neighborhoods held on the sidelines of a Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit, state media reported. The three have grown closer in recent years, with China and Mongolia both rolling out the red carpet this year for Russian President Vladimir Putin, as Moscow did for China's Xi Jinping in 2023, before Beijing then hosted Mongolia's president. China is ready to work with Russia and Mongolia to further enhance mutual trust, strengthen coordination, and promote deeper trilateral cooperation. Li, China's second-ranking official, said, according to the official news agency Xinhua. He was speaking to Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin and Mongolia's Prime Minister Loyun Erdin. Mongolia is not a member of the SCO, a China-led Eurasian security bloc, having chosen instead to be an observer state since 2004. Still, China continues to gently nudge its smaller neighbor towards joining the grouping of 10 nations. The resource-rich landlocked country is also courting officials from the United States, which has promised to invest in its mining and heavy industry. But Washington was critical of Ulaanbaatar's decision to host Putin in September, ignoring a warrant for his arrest from the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Such a warrant normally obliges the court's 124 member countries, including Mongolia, to arrest the Russian president and transfer him to The Hague for trial if he sets foot in their territory. Mongolia is on the planned route of a major pipeline that Russia wants to build to carry 50 billion cubic meters of natural gas each year from its Yamal region to China. In a separate meeting with Mishustin, Li said China was willing to strengthen trade and energy ties with Russia, Chinese state media added. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif called on Wednesday for the expansion of China's Belt and Road Initiative to enhance regional cooperation at a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Islamabad. He was addressing a heads of government meeting of the SCO, a Eurasian security and political group formed in 2001, being attended by officials from 11 countries, including host Pakistan, China, Russia, and India. Flagship projects like the Belt and Road Initiative of President Xi Jinping should be expanded, focusing on developing road, rail, and digital infrastructure that enhances integration and cooperation across the region. Sharif said in his speech as the chair of the meeting, the BRI is a $1 trillion plan for global infrastructure and energy networks that China launched a decade ago to connect Asia with Africa and Europe through land and maritime routes. More than 150 countries, including Russia, have signed up to participate in BRI since Xi unveiled it. Beijing's rivals see the BRI as a tool for China to spread its geopolitical and economic influence. Western countries under the G7 platform last year announced a $600 billion plans to launch a rival connectivity infrastructure development plan. BRI has also been criticized for increasing unsustainable debt in developing countries. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is a part of the BRI and has seen Beijing pump in billions of dollars into the South Asian country for road networks, a strategic port, and an airport. Sharif said CPEC would also help enhance cooperation, adding that 40% of the world's population lived in SCO's 10 few member states. He also called for a special development funding mechanism under the SCO. Indonesia's incoming leader Prabowo Subianto was briefing his would-be ministers on Wednesday on economic and geopolitical issues ahead of his Sunday inauguration, his spokesperson said, as his cabinet assessments continue. Prabowo this week summoned dozens of people who said they had been asked to join the next government, including current Finance Minister Sri Mulyani Indrawati. His cabinet has not been officially unveiled. Daniel Anzar Simanjuntak, Prabowo's spokesperson, said on news channel Kompas TV that the briefing was intended for the ministers to build a mutual understanding with Prabowo. Daniel said the topics of the briefing revolved around anti-corruption measures and the economy. The gathering, including speakers such as John Mashirma, a well-known American political scientist, and Ray Dalio, founder of the world's largest hedge fund. Two sources familiar with the matter told newsmen. Prabowo's agenda includes accelerating economic growth to 8% from the current 5%, while ending poverty and malnutrition in the nation of 280 million people. He also pushing a multi-billion-dollar program giving free meals to 20 million students. Local media also reported several ministers had arrived for the briefing at Prabowo's residence in the south of the capital, Jakarta, including Sri Mulyani and Erlangga Hartarto. The current chief economic minister Prabowo, an ex-military commander who won the presidential election in a landslide in February, will be sworn in on Sunday. His vice president is Gibran Raka Buming Raka, the eldest son of outgoing President Joko Widodo. Ukraine's 5-point victory plan calls for an unconditional invitation for Kyiv to join NATO and a strategic non-nuclear deterrence package in Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Wednesday. Addressing Parliament, the Ukrainian leader said the plan also envisages the eventual replacement of certain U.S. forces in Europe by Ukrainian troops, as well as an agreement among Kyiv's allies on joint defense and use of critical Ukrainian resources. Palestinian health officials called on Wednesday for a humanitarian corridor to 3 hospitals in northern Gaza that have come close to collapse, as Israeli troops have cut off the area during almost 2 weeks of heavy fighting against Hamas. Doctors at the Kamal Adwan, Al-Wada and the Indonesian hospitals have refused to leave their patients despite evacuation orders issued by the Israeli military at the start of a major push into the Jabalia area of northern Gaza 12 days ago. We are calling on the international community, the Red Cross and the World Health Organization to play their humanitarian role by opening up a corridor towards our healthcare system and allow the entry of fuel, medical delegations, supplies and food, said Hussam Abu Safiya, director of the Kamal Adwan Hospital. We're talking about more than 300 medical staff working at Kamal Adwan Hospital, and we can't provide even a single meal for them to be able to offer medical services safely. Jabalia, home to one of Gaza's 8 historic refugee camps, was cleared early in the war by Israeli troops pushing through northern Gaza, but Hamas fighters have re-established themselves in the area. Palestinian health officials say the new Israeli offensive has killed around 350 Palestinians in Jabalia and nearby areas. In Gaza City, on Wednesday, an Israeli airstrike on a house killed 13 people, medics said. In its daily updates, the Gaza Health Ministry said Israeli military strikes had killed 65 Palestinians across the enclave in the past 24 hours. The dire humanitarian situation has prompted worldwide alarm, with the United States issuing one of its strongest warnings to Israel that it must improve the situation or face potential restrictions on military aid. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk said on Wednesday he would protect his country's eastern border, dismissing criticism that a plan to temporarily stop accepting asylum applications violated human rights. Tusk will be among European Union leaders meeting in Brussels on Thursday, with the bloc set to tighten its stance on migration as the issue becomes increasingly sensitive for governments. In particular, those seeking to fend off challenges from the Eurosceptic and nationalist right. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow in Brussels, we will defend the Polish border and we will use all legal instruments, Tusk told lawmakers. Poland cannot be and will not be helpless. He was addressing Parliament after President Andrzej Duda used a speech in the chamber to add his voice to a chorus of criticism and the asylum policy adopted by the government late on Tuesday, saying it would harm Belarusian dissidents fleeing repression. Poland has become home to thousands of opposition supporters from its eastern neighbor since Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko won an election in 2020, which critics say was rigged. Migration looks set to play a key role in a 2025 presidential election in Poland, which has been grappling with a migrants crisis on its border with Belarus since 2021. Warsaw and the EU say Belarus and its ally Russia have orchestrated the situation by funneling people from the Middle East and Africa to the border, something Minsk and Moscow deny. Turks say Dada's criticism of the asylum plan was stupid, as the policy was aimed at migrants sent deliberately by Belarusian authorities. He also hit back at criticism from human rights activists who say refusing to accept asylum applications, even on a temporary basis, breaks Poland's constitution and international law. Britain said on Wednesday that India's cooperation with Canada's legal processes was the right next step in the ongoing diplomatic role between the two countries, adding that it had full confidence in Canada's judicial system. Canada on Monday linked India's High Commissioner and other diplomats to the murder of Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar on its soil and accused New Delhi of a broader effort to target India dissidents in Canada. India, which has long denied the accusations, retaliated by ordering the expulsion of 6 high-ranking Canadian diplomats, including the acting High Commissioner. We are in contact with our Canadian partners about the serious developments outlined in the independent investigations in Canada. The UK has full confidence in Canada's judicial system, the British government said in a statement. The government of India's cooperation with Canada's legal process is the right next step. Israeli strikes have killed at least 15 people in the southern Lebanese town of Ghana, which has been associated with civilian deaths after Israeli strikes during previous conflicts with Hezbollah. Israel also carried out airstrikes in Beirut's southern suburbs early Wednesday for the first time in nearly a week, targeting Hezbollah militant sites embedded among civilians. The strikes killed at least 5 people and destroyed a municipal building, with the city's mayor Ahmad Kahil among the dead. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Naib Mikati accused Israel of intentionally targeting a meeting of the municipal council and against soldiers. Hezbollah has said it will continue its attack until a ceasefire in Gaza is reached. Israel invaded Lebanon after airstrikes killed Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah and most of his senior commanders. Israel is still at war in Gaza, more than a year after Hamas' attack, which killed 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and abducted 250. Hospitals have received around 350 bodies since the offensive began on October 6, with more than half of the dead being women and children. Russian forces 2 villages in eastern Ukraine, Krasny Yar in Donetsk region and Neveks in Luhansk region. Russian state-run news agency TASS cited the Russian Defense Ministry was saying on Wednesday. The Ukrainian military said it had repelled Russian attacks near Karinsia on the Pokrovsk front over the past day, and that Russian forces had attempted to break through Ukraine's defenses around Nevsky on the Lyman front, according to a morning readout it posted on the Telegram messaging app. Ukraine is asking for a NATO membership invitation before Joe Biden leaves the White House, arguing it would be a fitting legacy for the U.S. president, a senior Ukrainian diplomat said. Ukraine's ambassador